Welcome to We Build Great Apartment Communities, the only show dedicated to the process and strategies for transforming apartment buildings to thriving communities. I am your host, John Brackett, and welcome to the show. All right, folks, welcome to another great episode of We Build Great Apartment Communities, the only place where you come to learn how to take apartment buildings and turn them into amazing communities. So we have another community builder here on our podcast. And everybody's going to love this name, Sam Zells. Welcome, Sam Zells, man.
Hey.
Hey, I love that. I love that, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Hey, so here's what's cool about having you on the show today, right? I mean, I think it's one thing to speak to investors that, that usually take a traditional path, right? They start off in real estate as a broker, as a longtime investor, but man, you have a very unique path. And so I'm really excited to jump into this because a couple reasons. One, you are a retired U.S. Air Force officer, a combat veteran, right? And also you're with the U.S. Air Force Special Operations with and Special Operations as an international health specialist. So I think there's a lot to uncover there because I think one of the cool things is oftentimes the careers that we're in, we build all these skills through those careers that are directly applicable to, in this case, investing. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about that. Would also like to thank you, man, for your service. Very grateful for that. Understand just the commitment and sacrifice. So I want to start off there. And I'm now going to introduce you, Sam, so that we can invite our audience into the conversation by sharing with them your bio. So Sam is a retired U.S. Air Force officer and combat veteran who founded Wild Mountain Capital in 2018. You know what? When I say that, I feel like I should be on a horse saying yippee-ki-yay. I mean, it has a nice ring to it. With a hero dad. So we're going to talk a little bit about your hero dad. I really appreciate you adding that. Sam traveled globally with the U.S. Air Force Special Operations as an international health specialist and saw poverty and a lack of safe housing while leading complex rehab and development projects worldwide. Very cool. This motivated Sam to start Wild Mountain Capital to transform neglected, unsafe, and mismanaged assets, not just into affordable housing, but also into housing that is affordable. I like that. So with Wild Mountain, the Wild Mountain team has 60 plus years of commercial and residential real estate experience with over about 75 projects under your belt. Since 2019, the team has syndicated roughly 20 different development projects / rehab properties, creating equity growth that has nearly double the initial investment in less than 2 years. Well, look, we're going to have a lot to talk about, man, when you're posting stuff like that. Okay. So really excited to have you on. So, hey, Sam, thanks for being on, man. And welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, John. Appreciate it. Happy.
I feel like I need some water after that introduction, man.
Probably should shorten that a little bit. Yeah.
Hey, so normally I don't read that long, but for a veteran, I go from A to Z. All right.
Oh man, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hey, bud. So let's start off by talking a little bit about your background, right? I mean, you have a military background, special operations. You've done some things. You've seen a lot of things, and so talk a little bit about your background and. Maybe how your background has allowed you to move into the space that you're in today, which is, investing in apartment buildings.
Yeah, sure. So, long story. I'll shorten it up here a little bit. So the past 10 years of my career really focused on working with foreign militaries, helping them develop certain capabilities. So when I was in Afghanistan, going all over the place, we were, working with these little tiny, border patrol guys on the outskirts of the country, living in mud huts, trying to see patients, trying to do their thing. To cities and all over the place. I mean, we just traveled all over Afghanistan and, got to be a 50 cal gunner for a while. That was fantastic. Good times. But mostly just, helping them develop, create capability and just loved it, really, really loved it. And got back from there, got the privilege of going and getting a master's degree in global health and health administration policy, so health policy, and got a year-long fellowship over at USAID, which is Agency of International Development, their Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance.
Nice.
And I mean, just my mind exploded with, all of a sudden working at the ground pounder level to now I'm writing, emails back and forth with ambassadors. You've probably heard of Samantha Powell. There's a lot of other folks out there that you may have heard their names, and stuff's getting sent to Barack Obama. Maybe you've heard of him. It's Chuck Hagel, like all these guys, and I'm like, how do I respond to their email? That's silly things that happen in life, and all of a sudden, just on this stage where you have such a huge impact, where policy really matters. And so seeing it from the ground pounder level, then going back up to this huge, overarching strategic level, I took an opportunity to go out and spent quite a bit of time in West Africa building, 200-bed facilities, 100-bed facilities, negotiating with local governors and provincial leaders and mayors and farmers. We're cutting down fields with machetes and building little clinics, and just super cool stuff. And then left there and went and joined special operations as a combat aviation advisor, and then spent the next several years traveling and helping these foreign military. So we had guys, you have the Green Berets were there, the SEALs were there teaching their boat guys, the Rangers are there teaching them how to fall out of airplanes and not get too injured, and shoot things and blow things up, and here we are, like,
not get too injured, huh?
Yeah, how to fall out of a plane and get pushed out and, live to tell the tale. And then here we are as, a group, 2, 3, 4 of us, and we're trying to teach them how to, this is an airplane, and they got this little tiny airplane or a little tiny helicopter. Like, this is how you put a patient on board. And this is a system. And, while, my medics were doing that, I'd be talking to the 3-star, 4-star general, the, charge of whoever in the embassy or whoever to say, hey, support this policy with money, funding, and then go to the ground and say, okay, guys, you got funding, you got this. Let's just get this little system. And all of a sudden these guys are pulling guys off the battlefield, whereas before they would just dig a hole and push them in it, because there's no healthcare when you're in sub-Saharan Africa.
I get it.
None. So, doing these super cool things and traveling all around, and man, poverty is, nobody in America really understands poverty.
No,
you're not poor. Like, I feel like I grew up poor, lived for a long time, and, with no running water, no power in America is crazy, right? That's not poverty. Poverty is way beyond that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a really funny story, right? So I understand what you're talking about. I grew up in the South Pacific, fourth world country. I didn't even know you had a fourth world country until I had a cousin that is now in politics, right? And so he's breaking this down for me because she's very involved in foreign affairs, et cetera. And I go, man, I didn't even know I didn't even know what a fourth world country was. I go, you mean we're not even third world? How is that even possible? But here's
undeveloped country,
So, I remember when I was younger coming to the United States, man, I was just completely fascinated. My dad is from the US, right? But I grew up in the South Pacific. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is when you grow up in an environment like that and you come to the United States, man, money freaking does grow on trees. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's about perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And what you're willing to do with the freedoms that we have here. And I think sometimes because this is such an amazing country and we have all these liberties that we can kind of take it for granted. And I think travel is really good because when you travel, you realize that, you know what, you mean it's not like this everywhere? This is not normal?
Yeah, I mean, we joke with our kids sometimes, like, you better knock it off or I'm going to sell you, But,
hey, man, I'm borrowing that, man. I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah, dad jokes, right? I mean, full of those dad jokes. But, but there's people that literally do sell their kids so that they can make it. I mean, they are selling their kids so that they can make it. and you say, that's horrible, that's terrible, but, and it is horrible and it is terrible, but what do you do? And those people feel like they have no option. So when you see that, I mean, yeah, if you're, a human being, you probably feel some kind of emotion in your heart. If you don't, you need to go see a psychiatrist. Now the question is, what do you do about that?
Right.
And so do you come back to America and you're like, man, that's terrible, I'm just going to watch TV now,
Yeah.
and, watch the latest show. But
it sounds like you're in a position now where you have the ability to influence those type of outcomes, which is great. Hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you this, Sam, we're neighbors, man. You're in New Braunfels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw that. So I'm in Green.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to connect after the show. But anyway, so what I was saying is, it sounds like you're in a position right now where you have the opportunity to make a difference on a very large scale. So I'm very interested in that. So I have a couple of different questions, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think these are going to be questions that are going to also tie into investing later. And so I'm going to start tying all this stuff together. I really appreciate you sharing your background, man. There's really a lot to unpack there. So my first question is this: I heard you say that you loved the experience probably at least 3 or 4 times, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can point to one thing that your biggest takeaway from all your years in the military, what would be the greatest skill that you've learned from all these experiences over the years, right? I mean, if you can point to one thing that you feel allows you to get things done, I don't know if you want to say the best or the most efficiently, but the skill that really has allowed you to propel your career, that you've been able to pull away from those experiences, what would it be?
At the very end of my career, and I hadn't even realized that this had become a skill. I think sometimes you just do things and it comes naturally to you.
Right.
Playing football wasn't that thing for me, even though I tried really hard. Man, Rudy would have made me look terrible. So I think
you're in Texas, man. That's like
I know, right? I'm in Texas going to high school. Yeah, and it was like $120 in high school with clothes on and pads. So what I really learned was at the very end, I had just an incredible doctor leader came to me and he said, "Hey Sam, I want you to put together a team, go to South Korea, create a plan to refurbish a 500-bed facility. The government has $64 million they want to throw at this thing. Figure out what that looks like, coordinate it with every single type of doctor, physician, whoever, peds, and I mean, just everything, in-flight care, I mean, all kinds of stuff, and come back to me with a plan." And I'm like, "You want me to do what?" "No problem. Got it." Right. And so I go and I put together, I'm like, "Can I have whoever I want?" He's like, "Yeah, whoever you want." It's like, great. And so I put together this team and never gone to Korea before. We flew there. We went on the ground. We called the right people. We set up the right things. We went through hundreds and hundreds of different meetings with different, ear, nose, and throat specialists and, trauma center specialists and this specialist and that specialist, and put together this big plan. And so I think what it really boils down to is I love people. I love humans. We all have, not everyone has a superpower, but a lot of people do have superpowers that there's something they're really, really good at. And I really need people who are on my team who can change, who can think through problems and don't throw their hands up and like, "Oh, this is terrible. We're never going to close this deal. I'm out." It's like,
right.
No. The deal got hairy. This is where it gets fun. Now let's solve it and get through it,
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
So I think that's my superpower.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So solving problems, right? Solving problems. You've learned how to solve problems, through all those experiences, which to me makes a lot of sense because you're being put in some very unique situations, right? And so what was the outcome of that 500-bed facility? Did you finish that? What was the outcome of that experiment?
I retired about two years into that, handed over everything to the Department or Defense Health Headquarters folks. so they could mull over the next steps. But we went through all the design phase and replacing, what size pipes need to go in the ground to what type of water treatment. But, and just if I could add, it's not just about solving problems, but it's about putting the right people together to solve the problems, and who are experts at things that I don't know anything about.
Yeah, I agree with that. Going through something like that, right now. And I've kind of had to learn that after some different meetings and some different mistakes. But yeah, it's just part of business and part of life, right? I think sometimes though it comes down to identifying what the limitations are and being willing to make really quick adjustments. Mm-hmm. Because when you see that either you have the wrong people in place or the wrong solution in place, in many cases, not making a decision is like not a decision.
Yeah.
And you got to make some changes, and prolonging that only creates more problems. Because oftentimes, man, what I see happen, especially in real estate, and I've gotten deals like this, is the inability to make a decision, right? Knowing that the ship is sinking and you don't really have enough resources to get out of it, or you're with a management company that keeps telling you that they're taking your $1 million and rehabbing the property, but you can't see any improvements.
Well, they're taking your money, all right.
You keep believing that it's coming, right?
Yeah.
You keep believing that it's coming until finally you don't have any more money. You don't have any more money, to improve the property and to solve those problems. And now you got to sell off the asset. So, I really appreciate you sharing that, Sam. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit.
Sure.
Now that we have your background, we have your superpower of solving problems, we have some of the experiences that you've been kind enough to share with us, man, about this really large project that you've taken on in the military. What are you focused on today? I mean, what are you looking to do today? Where are you spending your time?
So I think back to our days, training people how to do stuff with a handkerchief and some sticks, and seeing big guys come in with big dollars and buying them, a $100,000 patient bed. They're looking at like, what in the world is this thing? And as soon as those people shake hands, take pictures, smile with the ambassador and leave, then, the locals take that thing and put it in a closet somewhere and go back to their bandages and sticks, and so we always would use whatever we could that they already had. People forget that money is not the solution. People are the solution. Obviously, sometimes you need money, but where does that money come?
Money definitely helps, man.
Money definitely helps, but it's just a piece of the equation, right? People are what makes a difference. So if you focus on the people, and we found, at least with our communities, if we focus on the residents, if they're happy, they're going to stay longer. They're more likely to pay, even if they don't have to pay. Like when COVID came around, we had people say, "Oh, Mr. President said I don't have to pay rent anymore." I'm like, "Oh, did you lose your job? Because we can help." "Oh, no, I still got my job." Like, okay, did you get a pay reduction? "Oh, no, I'm fine." "Oh, okay, great. Pay your rent." Like, no, Mr. President said I don't have to pay rent. So, I mean, you get those folks, right? And you're like, I'm sorry, but we have to evict you. We have to uphold the rules and the regulations here so that everyone is playing the same game.
Right.
But if you have struggles, we're happy. We've helped so many people, as most apartment complex owners have. We've helped so many people find resources. You focus on the people, you can get to the solutions, and the money works. And to your point earlier, we've learned the hard way, just like you perhaps have, is trusting folks to do what's in your best interest can work out fantastically well, and it can also work out fantastically bad.
Yeah.
And so, understanding when to say stop, or so forth. That's an art, that we have to learn to master in this game. But
yeah. Well, it's just part of business, man. Part of business and part of life. Doesn't matter what industry. I think we're very fortunate to be in a country where we have the opportunity to go out and be entrepreneurs. And with that, just comes different challenges. And, part of being an entrepreneur is being able to navigate through those challenges. So I don't see it as a bad thing. I just think it's just part of the reality that we live in. And it just comes with the territory, right? So we got,
yeah, that's it.
We got to work through it.
That's it. Take the risk and, go. Don't stop.
Okay, cool. Hey, so Sam, talk to us about, let's create a contrast. Okay. Your first deal versus the last deal that you have done, or the most recent deal. So talk to us a little bit about your very first deal. And, we're going to comb through that thing, man, and pull out some takeaways there for the audience. And then we're going to get into a most recent deal and just compare some of the experiences there.
Sure. Real quick. First deal, 3-unit mobile home park, excluding 10 years of flipping homes. We're just talking about multifamily. That was the first deal. My last deal that we closed was a 245-unit apartment complex. That's 2 years, a little over 2 years after the first one that we closed. Big difference.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And so you're saying that the most recent one is how many units?
245 units.
204. And where is that one?
That was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 60% occupied. Beautiful deals. Hard to find these things that we love, where we can come in and make a huge difference.
Yeah. So how did you find the deal? Talk us through the 240-unit opportunity. You're in Texas, and you found an opportunity in Oklahoma. So maybe talk to us about the team and why Oklahoma and how that came to be.
Yeah, so we over the years, we've just had a number of brokers who have really enjoyed working with us, that we've enjoyed working with, and this one happened to be a good broker out of Memphis, Tennessee. We'd bought some properties out there with him. Had kept up the relationship for a couple of years, and he had heard about it through a friend. It was an off-market deal. The owners were considering selling it, and he connected us with them. We got the deal to work out. Probably one of the hairiest deals we've ever done to get through all the way to end. It ended up having 8 extensions. Crazy. Long story short, we closed the deal. Everyone walked away happy. And, it had 101 vacant units. And just in the past 2 months, we've renovated 40. So we churn out units like nobody's business, but yeah.
So what created, man, the delay there? I mean, you had 8 extensions. There must have been like a ripple effect, right? From first issue led into a second issue to maybe a third. So what were some of the problems that you had to solve to get to the finish line?
Right. Let's see if I can rattle these off. So the first one, we signed up with a good equity partner. They were bringing $4 million. We had a bunch of our investors at about $1 million in, plus the equity partner at $4 million. We took a chance on a broker out of Dallas. I will not use their names, but super cool guy. Seemed aggressive. Brokers are always aggressive and will, tell you whatever they think you want to hear. We've learned that the hard way. Normally we go straight to the lender. This time we said, okay, great. Find us the best rate, best deal. They came back with a lender. Awesome. Everything seemed great. Did the property tour, ready for close. They send us loan documents. And fortunately, we have an attorney on staff, probably the best hire ever. And he said, this is a loan to own program. And I said, tell me what you mean. And I read through that thing, and I've never been so shocked by a set of loan documents. And we showed those to our equity partner. He said, I will not close this deal with this group. And so we went back to our equity broker, our
when you say loan to own, what do you mean? Can you elaborate on that?
It had probably 20 provisions in there where they could take the apartment complex from us, not just bad boy provisions. If we didn't stick to the CapEx timeline, they could take the property from us.
Of course.
Now, this is in the era of COVID, when you order a fridge and it takes 3 months to get in there. If that doesn't mess up your CapEx rehab timeline, And,
Yeah, those are
come
hard money
on.
deals, man. Those are true hard money deals, right? You get a soft rate on the front end, but you have like 9 different provisions that are guaranteed to force you to give the asset back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, we're way too, long in the tooth to do this. I mean, even 2 years, we're not going to make this kind of a deal. So we just came back and we said, we're out. You guys are gone. You're fired. So we fired the lender. They threw a fit. You can't do that. I'm like, yeah, we can. I got my attorney, right there. And he's like, oh yeah. He goes, he practiced litigation for 10 years, real estate litigation. So he knows it. So we sourced so we got an extension, sourced another lender, and got them up to the table. Great. Got really close to the closing line, and our equity partner had to back out because something else happened on their side. And it was like, so 2 days out, I fly up there, spend a couple of days with the seller, like, hey man, please help us help you. Let's get this deal done. We were able to source new equity. We came back to the table. Something happened with title. We had to extend again. Then the sellers decided they didn't want to pay their mortgage brokers at closing.
Wait a minute. The seller decided they didn't want to pay their mortgage brokers. What does a mortgage broker have to do with closing a deal?
Not their mortgage brokers, their selling brokers.
Oh, okay.
They got mad at their selling brokers, and they said they wanted to cut them out of the deal. You're like, this is that. Then they need an extension.
Right.
Then people threaten lawsuits.
There's nothing that'll still a deal better than extended time, right?
Oh my goodness. So it's like, if you get through something like that, you're like, I can do anything.
Yeah. Well, that's really great, man. Sounds like you guys have worked through 40 units. So tell us about how you assembled your team out in that market, right? Because you're in Texas, you have the deal in Oklahoma, now you have to start putting together a team of contractors to start moving through those units and turning them. So talk a little bit about that.
So we were pretty fortunate. My dad, longtime construction guy, worked for major construction companies, and super, super awesome guy to work with, talk to, have fun with. We had hired some other crews to come work on one of our deals here in Texas. They were actually out of state. They enjoyed working for us so much better than they did the other groups that they were working for, that they just stayed with us. And since then, they've done, 6 or 7 apartment complexes for us. And they do, all they do is they work for us. We can churn out about 3 units a week because we'll, mass up to sufficient guys. And they do the same thing every day. And they call, my dad, he gets them whatever they need to get done. We're under like $1,000 or $2,000 less a unit than, any competitive bid that we've seen come in. And so we're saving a ton of money using our own crews, having our own development arm of the company. It's been really a great deal for us.
Awesome. And so when you say you're saving about $1,000 a unit, which is a lot of money, right? If you're doing volume, what does that come out to roughly per unit? Is it, what are you turning these things out per unit roughly?
We're churning them out for around 7,500 or less, with appliances, new everything. Our labor cost going in is right around $3,500 to $4,500.
Meaning labor cost per unit?
Yeah.
That's not bad, man. That's pretty good. So where do you gain the efficiencies then at that price point? Is it $200 plus? Is it $100 plus?
We're always looking for 100 plus doors. We like greater than 150 doors. We want lots of vacancy if we can have it. We bought things with about 5 or 6% vacancy. If you get things that are that low vacancy, you start running into issues with permitting and so forth. It's not an issue. It just adds time. And our guys are constantly busy. And if we run into a snag where we have to wait on the city to look over and say, yeah, get work done, and then go back to whatever they were doing before, playing video games or whatever, then it's, it jams up our pipeline. So we're able to move our guys back and forth if we need to, if things get hemmed up for whatever reason. but we like them to be on site. And if there's a lot of vacant units, it's easy for them to just walk in and say, all right, you're doing all these units, but now we got to wait on this one thing. So just move over and do these units. Right. Versus buying a 97% occupied, 100% classic, great value add opportunity. But now you got to do it through attrition, and it just takes a lot longer to get your stuff done.
Yeah, it definitely can. It definitely can. It definitely can. So let's unpack a couple of things inside of that, okay? So construction. Construction is always an interesting part of the business because it's where you can add a tremendous amount of value to almost any real estate opportunity if you're really, really good at it. It sounds like, fortunately, you have someone on your team that's been doing it for probably 30, 40 years, especially if they work with a large developer contractor and it's a strong corporate environment. They'll train the heck out of them, right? So when they leave that corporate world, man, they bring those skills with them. Sounds like you're kind of getting the benefit of that. So let me ask you a couple different questions, right? So COVID has created some bottlenecks with the supply chain, and now that's loosening up a little bit. But nonetheless, we're running into a couple different issues, right? You have I don't want to say a limited supply of labor because the supply hasn't changed. You just have less people working.
Yeah.
So you got that dynamic going on. And then the other side of that too now is you have, because of the limited labor supply, manufacturers are not really building out or producing at capacity, right? So you have less supply going out than normal, which is creating, in some cases, a bottleneck. But if you guys are turning out roughly 40 units a month, and you're including in those improvements all of your appliances, then it sounds like you have some really good vendor relationships, okay, that appreciate doing business with you. So talk through that dynamic and maybe speak to, for someone that's new getting into the business. When I say new, not brand new, because they're likely not going to be doing this kind of stuff at scale. But say they're at 100 units and they're looking to ramp up to 1,000. And construction is just a component of this business that you can't ignore, right? Right. Especially in a market that's tight, you have to look at things a little bit differently. And I think in order to raise your margins, you have to be willing to take on more risk. And oftentimes that involves construction. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would, for a person facing that, I'd give them two pieces of advice. One, partner with an operating partner who's got the systems in place so you can learn. Or two, I guess three pieces of advice. Two would be to hire a company that can do it for you. There's some pretty good ones, like in Austin, there's Gage Multifamily. They do a lot of stuff and they're pretty reasonable rates. The third is, if you're wanting to hold that development aspect in-house, you're going to have a hard time if you don't have that many units going and really negotiating great contracts with bigger groups. You may have really good luck though going to like Lowe's. When we first started, we'd go to Lowe's and say, hey, we want to buy, 20 fridges, and they would, discount them by 20%. And we ended up walking out of there with like 4 or 5 fridges for free. And, there's things like that you can do. There's places that'll resell appliances and other materials. You can get them that way. But, the big operators are getting stuff directly from India or China, which, by the way, right now is a mess. So they're not able to get their stuff out of China because of the shipping issues. So they're turning to anywhere else they can find them, to include Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, the big box retail stores where the price is, not necessarily the best.
Well, what about going direct to GE? Is that the China that you're talking about?
You can try. A lot of those guys won't even, they won't talk to you unless you've got, a huge amount or you're a certified vendor or whatever from them. And so, we try to go through some that were made in America, but they wouldn't work with us because they only work with retail shops. And so it's like,
they want to keep their distributors happy, I guess. Right.
Right.
Which makes a lot of sense. So China, you mentioned China and India. Um, is that where you're sourcing your appliances through, or are you? I mean, help me understand, how are you doing? How are you turning these units over that quickly? I understand the labor and the material side, but the appliances, man.
Appliances,
Yeah.
appliances. Right now, they're like death for us. So what we end up doing as soon as like the day we close, we buy appliances. I mean, like 40 of each, right? Just
Makes sense.
buy them. And then when we get an inkling that they're going to come, then we move our construction crews there and get them going, so they can be doing other units and other things until that stuff happens.
Right.
And then of course appliances get, it's going to be another 2 weeks. It's going to be another 2 weeks. It's going to be, 3 months later, it's going to be another 2 weeks. And you're like, whatever, I've already bought them somewhere else now, man. So I think, we haven't done the direct from China route. There are groups and entities you can call who will source them direct from China. We've never gone that way. We just really want to work with Americans as much as we can, as long as it doesn't drastically change our bottom line. And most of the time it doesn't.
Yeah. I think going direct to China in this, well, not only in the environment that we're in, but in the political environment that we're in, is likely very risky,
Very
especially
risky.
over the next 2 years. But that's why I was curious, if you're going direct to China, man, and India, and you're navigating through this, this political environment. I mean, that in and of itself is a talent.
It's interesting. So speaking of appliances, there's also lots of operators. I ran into a guy who was hired by Chinese people just to buy as many multifamily properties he could buy. So he was just out buying everything, American guy, walking in, buying everything he could buy, but it was all backed by Chinese money. We had one equity partner who said, hey, I'm backed by Chinese money. Is that an issue? And we ended up not doing the deal with them. Nothing against China that I want to talk about here on this thing, but just, we want to work with Americans as much as we can, and our friends and allies as much as we can.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And besides, it only makes sense to be able to source goods and services from companies that are in the communities that you're actually going to be deploying that money back into. I think I'm a really big believer in that. I am a huge proponent of that. I mean, I don't think it makes sense to do otherwise.
That's exactly what we do. So we get into that town and we just start knocking on all the doors to find where we can get appliances, materials, everything else, whether it's a big box store or not. It still goes, that's money into that community every time. So yeah,
I think that's really wise, man. And I think it does a tremendous service to the community. I don't think most people realize, when you start going up in the 100, 200 range apartment building improvement requirements, right? I mean, you're moving a lot of people in those markets, because there are just a lot of people that, in this case, mostly on the construction side and also the supply side, that get activated with all that buying.
That's right. So what you cannot get around is in the local markets, you're going to have to hire licensed electricians who are licensed by the state or the community, sometimes of that city, to work. Like if you're in Phoenix City, Alabama, they have to be approved by the Phoenix City Board to, put a breaker into the breaker box, right? So, I mean,
compliments to the stevedores, man. Most powerful union in the world.
Yeah. Oh man.
So let's talk about that, Sam, because you bring up some really great points, right? So in Texas, you compare Texas to San Diego on the construction side, very different worlds. Because in Texas, you don't need to be a GC to do general contracting, right? You don't need a general contracting license, or you don't need to be bonded. In California, a very different animal. You need if you're going to do general contracting, you need to be a general contractor. You need to be licensed. You need to be bonded, right? So speak to that a little bit, because I think what most people don't realize is when you start scaling up and doing a lot of construction, it's usually the core trades, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, sometimes roofing, but not often. But usually electrical, plumbing, HVAC are the core trades that require a license, right? A state license. So speak to that a little bit, man, because here in the United States, you go do business in one state, and the requirements are very different. But normally the core trades are all required to have licenses. But I think it's important to touch on that because, if you have someone that's never built anything in Texas and they go out to Texas and everybody's a general contractor,
yeah,
likely going to have some problems.
Yeah, it's funny. We partner with people from California and like, well, we want to see your GC license. You're like, we don't have one because we don't need one. Well, okay, so we're going to do work in Oklahoma. We need to see your GC license. Like Oklahoma doesn't offer a GC license, so don't even. So you need to know the rules and laws of your state for sure, 100% down. So if you don't know the rules of Arkansas and you don't want to learn all the rules in Arkansas, don't do business in Arkansas.
Yeah, you don't want to learn the rules on the fly because that can create some expensive problems. So here's what's really interesting, right? One of the things I love about Texas is like a buyer beware state, man.
Yeah.
Buyer beware. California, it's the total opposite, right? Total consumer protection. Texas, man, it's buyer beware. The state expects you to use exercise some common sense.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't, you fail. And that's your learning experience. You just failed. So, I can't, express how much that people, partner with other folks. If you're new to this, join, a syndication company, an investment firm, intern somewhere, learn some of these ropes because there's a lot of hard lessons to learn. And, we've learned a lot of hard lessons, and I will tell you, do not do that because that is
Well, it's good to soften the blow with other people's experience, right? That's what I always say. Right. I always tell my kids, soften the blow with other people's experiences. My oldest daughter, on the other hand, man, she's kind of like me. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it and learn. And she does. And so
wonderful.
I'm really proud of her. Well, hey, but we are at the end of our show, Sam Zells. And then it's been great having you on. Really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you talking through this, sharing your background, number one, your experiences in the military, how you working as an operator in health, then opened up not only great opportunities for you to serve the communities that you're in, especially in very impoverished communities like Afghanistan, right? But then everything that you've done there, all that service that you have done there, opened up opportunities for you to gain additional education, right? Higher education or higher learning. And then that opened up some opportunities for you to start getting into the world of politics, which I think is great. And of course, the world of politics, man, that's not my space. But being that, you're in New Braunfels, I'll still support you, man, because you're my neighbor.
Yeah, thanks. We'll have to go get lunch at Buc-ee's sometime.
Let's do it. That'll be great. Hey, so I'm going to wrap it up. I left out the other third, which is all that experience has then allowed you to transition into this space, which it sounds like you're having a great time. You're doing a lot of great things, not only for the community, for your investors, which I think is great. So congratulations, man. Thanks for being on, and look forward to your continued success.
All right. Thank you, John. Really, really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners. And talk soon.
Sounds great, man. Clarity of purpose creates our greatest competitive advantage. When we transform apartment buildings to thriving communities, we improve how people live and create assets with high profit margins. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this up with a friend. I'm John Brackett, bringing you things you can implement right away.